Hello, everyone. Welcome to all those who are joining us for our life story on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. We have a wonderful life story tonight coming from LifeStories Worldwide. If you need prayer, you need help, then contact us on our hotline, +44 794 355 0287. You can also go to our website, lifestoriesworldwide.com. And again, you'll find lots of information to help you. Our life story tonight is from Steve Legg. Steve is an author and a gifted speaker, traveled all over the UK and in many countries, sharing the good news by comedy, by trickery, by mystery. He'd probably explain to you what that's all about. He is also the editor of a wonderful magazine called Sorted. I'm sure many of you have seen that magazine, which is in booksellers in the UK. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Steve now to share his story. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Alan. How slick and professional. I was very impressed. Lovely to see you, everyone, all over the world. I hope you're ready for 5 hours of fun. I'm joking. It's not going to be fun. No, it is going to be fun. My name is Steve and I'm based in Littlehampton in West Sussex. We know it as LA because everyone drops their H's down here. So it's lovely to be broadcasting live from LA on this beautiful sunny night. So my name's Steve and I'm going to share some of my story with you. I come from a non-Christian family. No one in my family ever went to church, probably for funerals and weddings, but that was about it. And then one day I saw a poster up at my school. I was 12 years old, advertising the Boys Brigade, opening a new company about 5 minutes from my house. Now, the Boys Brigade, if you don't know all about the BB, is a wonderful Christian organisation, started in 1883 in Glasgow. And very similar to the Scouts, but with the BB, it's attached to a church. And very proud of its Christian roots and its ongoing Christian heritage, which means if you go to the BB, you've got to go to church on a Sunday. So there's me looking at this poster, 12 years old, thinking, I'm not very keen on going to church, but I'm keen to join the Boys Brigade because you play football every Saturday. And I'd heard there was a girls' brigade. And as a young man, I thought, yeah, I'll have a bit of that. So I started going and we went every Friday night and we did drill and football and had lots of fun with all my mates, but we had to go to church every Sunday. And I got to say, the church that I went to back then that our company was attached to was really boring. And it just confirmed all my misconceptions about God, Jesus and Christianity, that Christians were boring. They went to church 20 times on a Sunday. They Sky Plus songs of praise. They helped old ladies across the road, even if they don't want to go, and all this sort of stuff. And my concept of God was boring old man, looks like Father Christmas, wearing a white dress. But I carried on going because I wanted to play football and I wanted to go to activities on a Friday night. 1 year on, we went to a Boys Brigade camp in Devon, and it was an amazing week. And we all got sunstroke because back in the day, we didn't worry about skin or sunburn or anything like that. But amongst the sunburn and the football and the larking around, we heard this amazing message, which I now know is called the gospel. And the word gospel is a Christian word, but means good news. And I heard this good news from this amazing vicar that was there. His name was Bruce. And I've got to say, he wasn't very trendy. He played a harmonica type thing, and he told stories, and he drew little pictures and stuck them on a board. But he talked for the first time in a way that I understood about being a Christian and knowing Jesus properly, because I used to think if you went to church, it'd make you a Christian. As simple as that. I thought if you were born in England, you were a Christian. If you were christened, you were a Christian. I didn't realize there was a lot more to it. And the penny finally dropped as Bruce spoke and preached and we sung together every night. And he gave us all a little booklet called Journey into Life that explained how to know Jesus, how to say sorry for those wrong things in our lives that we do say and think that are wrong, believe that Jesus died on a cross. And thirdly, we ask God to come and live inside us. And I thought to myself, bear in mind, I was 12 or 13, this is either the biggest load of rubbish I've ever heard, or it's true. And if it's true, I need to do something about it. And I decided on the coach on the way home, I was going to give this a go. Because I figured if God was real, he would change my life and life would never be the same again. And if it wasn't true, then nothing would happen and I'd risk nothing. So we got home, 1.5 hour journey home. I dumped my suitcase in the kitchen, ran up to my bedroom, got down on my knees and said, God, if you're there, come in and change me. And do you know what? He did. But I can't say I really felt much. I don't think I felt anything really, but I knew deep down that I'd asked God to take over my life. I'd said sorry and was really sorry, asked Jesus to take over and asked God to come and live inside me by the power of his Holy Spirit to help me live for him. And in the little booklet, it said within 24 hours, tell someone of your decision to follow Jesus. So I went down and told the first person I saw, my dad, who wasn't a believer, who clipped me around the ear, swore at me and said, what have you done a stupid beep, beep, beep thing like that for? So I kind of knew from then on I would be destined to be sharing my faith to people. Some people very, very anti. And that very simply is my story. It changed my life. And the more I got to know God, the more I wanted to tell other people. So as I said earlier, I realized this good news, this word gospel is good news, and good news is for sharing. And it's wrong to keep good news to ourselves, isn't it? And I became an avid faith sharer. I guess you might call me, it's a bit of a religious word that a lot of people don't like, an evangelist. But I started telling people. And I left school at 16 and I started working for Barclays Bank. And always messing around at work, always having a lot of fun with the customers, always being really sort of cheeky, but having a lot of fun along the way. And we would go out to the pub and we would go out to nightclubs. And every night I would try to lead at least 5 or 6 people to Jesus in these places. And if I came back on a Friday night after being out with my mates from work and 5 people hadn't come to know Jesus, I'd be really disappointed because I knew he'd changed my life so significantly. And at the age of 21, I went full time sharing my faith. I was working at a big Christian organization called Spring Harvest. And I went there and served there every year. And I didn't really think I could do much, but they were always after stewards. And I thought, well, I'm good at moving chairs and saying to people, you can't park there. And with my lovely complexion, looked very good in a tabard, fluorescent tabard, and liked having a walkie-talkie. But one night I was there and the guy preaching, the main speaker, said, I believe God tonight is calling people into full-time work to travel and share the good news of Jesus on a full-time basis. And I felt God nudge me and I went forward and I knew from that moment on, God was calling me into a full-time role in my faith sharing experience. And I went home and told my mum and dad about this, that I was going to resign from the bank and travel the world telling people about him. So of course they went utterly ballistic and had about a year of constant disapproval and emotional blackmail. But I knew God had called me. And on the 3rd of October, 1988, I went full time. I joined Pioneer, a network of new churches led by Gerald Coates, who very sadly died recently, who set up a training scheme called TIE Teams that stands for Training in Evangelism. And I started there and I was seconded to work with a full-time evangelist called Pete Gilbert, who was into creative ways of sharing his faith. And because I was interested in magic and conjuring and trickery, I worked with Pete and I kind of developed those skills because going back to the age of 13, I used to watch Paul Daniels, the amazing master magician and illusionist, on BBC One every Saturday night. And one night I saw him make an elephant disappear. And I thought, man, I'd love to be able to do that. So that was my hobby. And I thought, how about putting my hobby and my faith together? So since 88, I've been out there on the road doing magic. For many years, I used to do escapology. I used to escape from a regulation straitjacket, as you do. Would travel around, getting out of a straitjacket and talking about how things in our lives can tie us up and stop us from being free. Sin ties us up and stops us from being free, but only knowing Jesus can set us free. And I would do that on the streets. I would do that hanging upside down from cranes. We set up a stunt for the BBC from a helicopter and all these sort of stuff. And it was a wonderful visual parable of how God can set us free. So TIE Teams came and I put the two together and I've been on the road ever since. And I've been everywhere once, I like to say. I don't often get invited back. That's a joke I do. And do comedy nights and alpha launches and use comedy and trickery. I tend to avoid the word magic because I've been to some churches and you talk about magic, and after the show, you see some people marching around the car park chanting, "He's a witch, burn him." I'm not a witch. It's not real magic. It's just tricks and stuff. Jesus told stories, and I do visual parables. And over the years, things have developed, and I've done more creative stuff. A lot of the creative stuff I've done has resulted in hearing a story. For example, let me be the first to wish you all a very happy Christmas. But I really do think about Christmas every day. This is a project. There we are. Let's get the glare off there. That I came up with 15, 16 years ago. I was in the school playground chatting to my accountant. And I always explained we both had children at the school. We didn't just meet there to discuss my tax return. And he was telling me, oh, no, sorry, I'll tell you, let me talk about Sorted first, then we'll come back to the cartoon. So chatting to my accountant, and he was telling me how his 10-year-old son's mates were bringing lads mags into the playground. Some of these really unhelpful mags, Nuts and Loaded and FHM, that really objectify women and are really unhelpful. And he said, wouldn't it be great if someone started something that was good and wholesome, that could go all over the world, that could go into prisons, that could be available in newsagents on high streets. And I felt God nudged me. And I've learned over the years that finance follows faith. And I can see some of you are making notes. And if you're going to make any note, I would suggest that this one is the biggest thing I've learned in 34 years of following Jesus and being on the road full time, that finance does follow faith. And if some of the projects we come up with are of God, the finance will come in. And it's very unusual for the finance to come in before you step out. This is why I have so many grey hairs. So I had this idea for this men's magazine, a Christian men's magazine that could go all over the world. And I thought, we'll call it Sorted. I didn't want to call it Jesus is Lord, even though he is. I wanted to call it something non-religious that people in newsagents could pick up. And Sorted was born. And here it is. We celebrate our 15th birthday in November. This is our latest one, hot off the press. And this really goes all over the world. We send these free into 76 UK prisons. One prison, a Category A prison, Belmarsh, on the outskirts of London, has some very dangerous people in. And I used to send 80 copies in there to the chaplain. And he phoned me one day and he said, any chance you could send me another box, turn it up and make it up to 120, because scuffles are breaking out when the magazine's arriving. These prisoners are fighting to get their hands on a Christian magazine. And I thought, wow, I like that. So we send them 120 copies. Over the years, pre-COVID, we gave copies away in all sorts of crazy places. I like to use really good secular distribution companies because they think outside the box. So we've given copies away in airport departure gates. We've given copies away in bars and restaurants, hotels. We've given copies away at tube and railway stations. You know, over the years, you'll have seen Metro and Evening Standard given away at tube and railway stations. Well, Sorted's been there as well when we've had the resources. When the Olympics came to London in 2012, we gave away 50,000 copies in the athlete villages. And it's just been phenomenal, some of the stories we've heard. I've had two American, and we love our American friends, two American pilots write to me who came to Christ because they picked up a copy at an airport departure gate. They took it on the plane, put it in their flight cases, read it in a hotel somewhere, and prayed a prayer of commitment to Jesus. So it's just phenomenal. So that's a really exciting thing that we do. So do check that out, guys. That's sortedmag.com. There's Martin Sheen on the front. And every edition we have culture and sport and amazing stories. We interview some incredible people with Mark Wahlberg on the cover of the last one. Mark Wahlberg, the American actor, is a good Christian man. And people pick it up. And I say to Christian people who subscribe, once you've read your copy, give it to a friend. Leave it somewhere. Leave it at the doctors, the dentists, the barbers. Leave it at work in the canteen. Put it through someone's door. Do it at midnight if you're really scared, because the gospel is good news and the gospel works. And it's laid out in such an attractive way in Sorted. So that's Sorted. That's one thing that we do. I write books on faith and some of the things that have happened over the years. Oh, and this is the Christmas thing I was going to tell you about as well. So this is It's a Boy. I've realised over the years that every year, certainly in the UK, and I know we've got people watching from all over the world, but certainly in the UK, every year, Jesus gets pushed out a little bit more at Christmas. Yeah, we've got people nodding. It's true, isn't it? And often as Christians, we complain about it, but we don't do anything positive. And I get fed up with people just moaning. I think we should do something positive. So I heard a story about a 4-year-old boy who heard the Christmas story for the first time at his primary school. And at the end of the day, he had a question for his teacher, and he was too embarrassed to ask in front of everyone else. So at the end of the day, he went up to his teacher and said, "Why did Mary and Joseph name their son Jesus after a swear word?" And it hit me for 6, and I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, that this little 4-year-old boy had only ever heard the name Jesus by people swearing. And I looked into it, and certainly in the UK, 756,000 children go to church on a Sunday, which means 11.8 million don't. 11.8 million don't. And I thought it's harder and harder reaching them. And I thought Christmas is a good time to start. So I came up with this initiative called It's a Boy, a fresh way of telling people about Jesus at Christmas. And it started life as a little Christmas card that looked like a birth announcement. And I encouraged people to buy packs of hundreds of the things and send them to people at Christmas. And because I thought about it, and I'm a bit of a telly addict, I phoned up, well, I didn't phone, but I wrote to EastEnders and Coronation Street and Emmerdale and explained this national initiative, because I always like to think big, that was going to be happening in the UK around Christmas time, and all these little cards will be up on people's mantelpieces. And we ended up with a card on the Emmerdale set. So that was nice to see that at Christmas time. And I encourage people to send these in as a Christmas card. And I also encourage people to send them out when you receive junk mail, because we always get loads of junk mail every day. And most junk mail comes with an envelope with a stamp on it, a reply paid envelope. And I thought someone's going to be opening these things. So put one in and put it back in the post. Because you never know, do you, who might be opening all these responses. So we did that, and then it turned into a musical play that hundreds of schools used over the years, primary schools, as a nativity play. And we were reaching more and more people every year. But I thought, how are we going to reach every child in every primary school? And I thought, how about turning it into an amazing cartoon, a Christmas cartoon, a fresh retelling of the Christmas story told through the eyes of 3 little birds, 3 little quails. And I found an animator, a Christian guy who'd worked for Disney and all sorts of great companies, whose work was amazing. And he said, yeah, I can do that for you. And it'll cost £20,000 and it'll take 3 months. And to be honest with you, I didn't have £20 spare in my back pocket. But once again, this mantra I've lived with through my Christian life is finance follows faith. I thought, I've got the faith to believe I could raise 20K. And we stepped out and I commissioned him to do it. And would you believe it? In the end, it took 3 years and cost $250,000. But I'm glad he didn't tell me that at the beginning, because I don't think I would have had the faith for that. And my faith grew along this process. And I chatted up some amazing friends in the world of show business and asked them to provide their voices, which they all did. We got people like Stephen Burkhoff, the very well-known actor, and a load of comedian friends, Joe Pasquale, Cannonball were in it. There was a young actor called David Oyelowo, who was in Spooks, who is now a Golden Globe nominated actor, and he's in it as well. And I said to these guys, listen, I can't pay you anything, but I believe God will honour your careers and will bless your careers. And half of these guys weren't even believers, but it's true, God honoured their careers for doing this. I really do believe that. So we raised the money, $250,000. It took 3 years. And then, 15, 16 years ago, this came out, and we sent a free copy to every single primary school in the United Kingdom. 25,199 schools got a copy of this. I know that figure because I had ordered the Jiffy bags and the stamps and put them in and everything, reaching a potential audience of nearly 6 million children. So that was 15, 16 years ago. We had a world premiere at the Odeon Cinema in Leicester Square in London. The world's press were there, and it was an incredible day. But as I said, reaching those schools, that audience of nearly 6 million. And every year I still hear from schools who show it. And it's fun and it's relevant and it's really entertaining. But the heart of it is the true meaning of the Christian message that God sent his son 2,000 years ago into 2,000 miles away into this place where he was born, in a stinking old shed next door to a pub in the middle of nowhere. Yet this little baby grew up to be a man who changed the whole world and turned the whole world upside down. So that's It's a Boy as well. So do you know what, Alan and George? I think that's probably about it. That's all I want to say. I think maybe people might have some questions, but before I hand over to you, I'd just love to invite you to maybe pray with me just where you are. Because I keep saying this message, this gospel is good news. And this is the best news in the world, that God loves you so much. He risked everything. He sent the most precious thing he had, his one and only son, to this earth. And he lived an amazing life. And he wasn't religious, and he wasn't boring, and he didn't go around telling people off for laughing or anything like that. He was an incredible person who came, who lived, who died, who rose again, which is impossible, totally impossible, because he was dead. And it is impossible unless it's true. And the Bible says, you know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And that truth set me free after this Boys Brigade camp. And it has transformed my life completely. And I prayed that prayer at the end of this camp. I'd got sunstroke. I'd not washed. I'd not changed my pants all week or socks. So we'd been camping. But I prayed this very, very simple prayer, and it turned my life upside down. And just going to invite you where you are now, just to maybe close your eyes and pray this prayer with me if you want to follow Jesus for the first time, or as an act of recommitment, or if you're not sure, to make sure. He really is just a prayer away. And here is the prayer. So pray this with me if today, this moment, you want to know Jesus as your very best friend. Here's the prayer. Father God, I want to say sorry for my sins, for all those things I've ever done, said, and thought that were wrong. I'm truly sorry. And I choose to turn from those things. I believe that Jesus was the Son of God, and he died on a cross to set me free. So right now, Father, I ask you to come and live inside me. Fill me with your Holy Spirit and be with me forever. Amen. So there we go. That's the prayer. It's as difficult and as easy as that. It really is. But if you pray that with all your heart, like I did as a 12-year-old, your life will never be the same again. Alan, George, over to you, and let's take some questions. And I'm sure there's lots of things I've not said that you might want to pick up on.
Steve, that was really exciting hearing all that you've been doing. Wonderful how God has guided you and led you, and for so many people you've reached through the different things you've been doing. Wonderful. We thank God for the way he's led you. And if you prayed that prayer following Steve tonight, then please let us know. Please contact us on our phone line, +44 794 355 0287. Or go to our website, LifeStoriesWorldwide.com. You will find there a salvation prayer link. You can click on there, let us know you've prayed that. You can also get information. You get a Bible app, which will help you to know more about Jesus and this wonderful life that Steve's been sharing with you. So I'm going to hand over to George now. I believe he's got some questions for Steve. Thank you, George.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Steve. What a resume. Now then, you said that you will use trickery, mystery, and comedy.
Yes.
What kind of trickery do you do?
Well, I do magic. Well, as I said, I try to avoid the word magic, but I would do card tricks. I would do magic of the mind. We know it as mentalism. So, George, if you would hire me for a comedy night, wherever you are, I would come along and we'd have a night of fun. And I don't like to use the word, some people call me an illusionist, but I don't like that word because I think people assume you're going to come with cages of lions and tigers and 5 dancing girls, and I turn up with a couple of suitcases and act that's taken me around the world. So it's fun, it's comedy, it's tricks. We get lots of people involved. I would do something with 5 guys. We ask them a question to see how they react. We put them on stage. We get them to take an object out of a box, keep it hidden away so no one can see. And through asking them a few questions and understanding body language and things like that, I can generally determine who's taken what. I do stuff with memory. I've got a photographic memory that's proved very useful over the years. So I've memorized some books, so someone will look at a word in a book and then I'll know what that book is and where that is in a dictionary. All this sounds very dull and boring as I'm telling people about it. You've got to see me in action as well. Really, we do banter and fun. We'll have some kids on stage as well. I was performing a couple of weeks ago, and we had 6 children on stage, and another 2 jumped up on the stage. A couple of little brothers, 3 and 5. So I got them involved in the act, and there's a little bit of business, as we would call it in the business, it's called a breakaway wand. It's a magic wand that you hand it to someone and it falls to bits. So I handed it to this little 3-year-old, and of course he took it. It broke into 9 different pieces. I pretended not to see. Everyone fell about in the audience. I turned to him, I said, "Who broke that?" And he pointed at his brother. So that was very, very funny. But describing it sounds very dull, and people thinking that's not funny. You have to see me in action, really. And there's lots of bits of me on YouTube. This way, over the last couple of years, I found Zoom very hard. I need interaction. I need to bounce off people. I need to observe, and someone will have a funny laugh, or someone will do something, or someone will come in late. Do you know what I mean? And in the act, I never tell jokes. I don't do jokes. It's just observations and bits of business.
Speaking of working with people, have you ever picked some dull subject who didn't react for you?
Do you know what? I'm pretty good at it, really. Over the years, you learn who to choose. You don't want to choose someone who's the life and soul of the party, because sometimes those sort of people want to take over, which isn't helpful. You never choose someone who's being volunteered by someone else. You know, you'll have a bloke in the audience who thinks it's hilarious to put his wife's hand up. That's not funny. We wouldn't use those. I'm always observing people. So even when I'm speaking in a church, I never want to be on the front row with the pastors. I want to be at the back, seeing what's going on, seeing who's enjoying themselves, who's having a better laugh. Because picking the wrong person can be an utter disaster.
And where did you learn all this? I mean, did you go to a school? Did you go to a training camp? You know, or did you just pick it up during your own experience? Do
you know what? I picked it up initially from books. As I said, I saw Paul Daniels make an elephant disappear. And on one rainy Saturday afternoon, I went to the library and picked up a book on magic, and then realised there were companies out there that sold books and paraphernalia and props, and I found some of those. And of course, these days, it's really easy with YouTube. You can go on and learn all sorts of things. So, you know, these days I would buy a trick. So this is a new trick I bought, which I'm not going to show you because I've not really practiced it. And you pay your $100, you get it in from America, and then you come up with a little routine, and then you put it in the act. And if it's something I like, I'll probably use for the next 15 years. It's easy to get a little bit lazy sometimes because you have stuff that you know works really well. But if you go back to the same place, you need to do a different show. Having an act like magic and comedy, you can't do the same stuff again and again. This is why it's a lot easier for singers who go back with a repertoire that everyone wants to hear.
Exactly. And have you ever actually come up with any of your own ideas, such as, you know, acting?
Yeah, I've twisted stuff and come up with thought, once again, very silly things. Come up with little routines. So you buy a standard trick and you put your spin on it. So I described this, it sounded very dull, with the 5 guys in the audience. I would get the 5 guys standing up, I'd ask them a question each, and then I'd get them on stage. And it occurred to me, the 5 guys looked like a YMCA tribute act once. So the following week, we got the YMCA music on. We got 5 YMCA hats. So we put them on stage. So one's a cowboy, one's got the little sailor hat on. One is the native red Indian. One is the policeman with a little leather cap. And it just takes a standard trick and makes it a piece of wonderful theatre that everyone enjoys.
Now, you mentioned also, I mean, when you said the word magic, you don't like mentioning it in some churches. How receptive are churches and Christian places to this kind of, shall we say, entertainment?
Do you know what? Incredibly. I guess if you weren't into it, you wouldn't book someone like me in the first place. But in a normal year, I would do 120 to 150 gigs a year. So every Friday and Saturday, pre-COVID, I would be doing, as I said, a comedy night, a family-friendly cabaret, an alpha launch, family service throughout the UK. So normally I would do, 50,000 miles a year, 150 gigs.
Okay, and just to ask for the record, how many times have you actually been lectured by somebody in the church about not doing such a thing?
Oh, do you know what? Rarely, very rarely. People normally write to me because they're scared to say something to my face. And I always do a disclaimer at the beginning, like I did earlier, that it's not magic. It really is just tricks. Yeah, but sometimes it's so illogical. I mean, I did a show in a vicar's garden, and it was a kind of an appreciation barbecue for people in the church. And he said, look, there's two ladies, and when you get up, they are going to go because they're convinced that magic is of the devil. And he had this wonderful spread. He did a hog roast and a seafood platter. And I was watching these women tucking into the pig and into the shellfish. And I thought there's more in Leviticus about these things being banned than there is magic. And I thought, hello, it doesn't talk about it's witchcraft, and I don't do witchcraft. You know, there's certain parts in the Old Testament that says you shouldn't shave your beard. So it's a little bit illogical, really, some of it.
Did you make the hog roast disappear that night?
Oh, I love a hog roast. I don't know about you, George.
Now, when you were growing up as a kid, did you ever envisage or imagine that you would be doing such a thing for the rest of your life?
No, do you know what? Not in a million years. I reference Spring Harvest, this wonderful Christian festival that they do in the UK that back in its heyday would have 70,000 Christians meeting at holiday camps. And I really thought there was nothing I could do apart from move chairs. I was working for Barclays Bank, and I thought, well, maybe I could be a Christian bank manager. I could earn some, big bucks and sow that into the kingdom. I never thought there was in a million years I could stand in front of people talking about anything. And then God got a hold of my life and changed me completely. And, sometimes I still get a little bit nervous, certain things, but put me in front of 1,000 people in a theatre, I'm in my element. And one of the things I've not mentioned, I don't know if you guys even know about this, but one of the overseas places I went to was Mexico City. And I went there every Halloween time, and they have this big festival of the dead that our American friends will know about. And, it's very dark and evil, and they have floats and celebrations and very weird events going on. And I kind of got involved in one of them and asked if I could go on stage and speak to them about Jesus and perform. And I was still doing escapology at the time, so I took my straitjacket with me and got fastened into my straitjacket. And there were people in black robes on the stage and a couple of coffins, believe it or not. I even had a photo taken sitting on the coffin afterwards. I was put into my straitjacket by these guys, and I talked about sin tying people up. And I said, as I escaped, who wants to meet the Lord of Life at the Day of the Dead? And 200 people streamed forward and became Christian. Wow. And it was so bizarre that an evangelist, a preacher, was at an occult festival. But would you believe it, George? They asked me back the following year, and I was on the posters.
Wow.
You'd have thought I'd have put them out of business. So it's just crazy, some of the responses I've had, and they've generally been really positive. I can't
tell you that the gospel actually can go anywhere.
It really can. I think sometimes in our minds we can think, oh, they won't be interested. I couldn't say this there. I've learned over the years, people are often waiting to be asked. I did a university gig many years ago, and I took a boyfriend of a young girl who was in our church. And she was Christian, her parents were Christians, the whole family were Christians, and she started dating this guy, Jeff, who wasn't a believer. And it caused many arguments, many tears in the family about lovely Susie being led astray by Jeff. And I really got on with him. I took him to a gig that I did at Guildford University, and I preached the gospel, told people about Jesus, how they could know him. We did a prayer at the end. And I came up to him at the end and I said, what do you think of that? He said, oh, it was brilliant. And I said, why don't you become a Christian? He said, I'd love to. Just no one had ever asked him. No one had ever asked. No one had ever said, why don't you do it now?
Wow.
And I led him to Jesus then and there. I often say to people, can you imagine going into Curry's, the electrical store in the UK, and looking at all these tellies and the salesman telling you how great this telly is, and it's 58 inches and it's 4K and it does this and it does that and Sky's included. And then he just says goodbye and shows you out the store. And you're thinking, how do I get it?
Yeah.
And with this message we've got, it's so amazing and it's so attractive and it's so incredible and so life-changing.
Wow.
I often think as Christians, for those of us who know Jesus, just ask people, why don't you do this now?
Amen.
What's stopping you?
Now, you said when you were 12, you went to the boys' brigade. Did you enjoy the camping?
Do you know what I did? Because you're there with your mates.
I mean, I loved it as well.
You think back, long, hazy days, sunny, football, the smell of chemical toilets. I mean, it was bliss, wasn't it? I mean, the thought of going camping these days,
Black faces.
Yes. Were you in the BB?
Yeah. I was in the Boy Scouts. I used to wake up with a black face now and then. Black boot polish.
Yes. No, BB, amazing. Love it. I love working Boys Brigade and Scouts and all those organisations. Really special times in people's lives.
What's this at 12? You said you thought God was a boring old man.
Yeah, as a kid who didn't go to church, who wasn't religious, who wasn't a churchgoer, who didn't have family, my conception of God was boring old man, looks like Father Christmas.
And what is your conception of God now?
He's an amazing dad, a perfect father, loves me to bits, rooting for me. I'm the apple of his eye, and I think that's crazy because I do such terrible things and think such awful things, and he still loves me to bits, and he's there with open arms to say, I forgave you when I saw you coming.
Wow.
And if I go back with the same thing to say sorry, he'll say, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. He's already forgiven it. He forgives. He doesn't just forgive, and this is what I think people often miss out. He forgives, but he forgets as well.
Amen.
Wow. Incredible.
Yes. So you said you were 13. You made that decision.
13, yeah.
You made it. And he said you had to tell somebody, and you told your dad, but he wasn't best pleased.
No, he wasn't.
So tell us how that progressed. Did you get to talk to him afterwards about that, or when you were older?
No, my mum and dad are still alive. My old dad's probably about 83, and mum must be 81. They still say to me, when are you going to get a proper job?
And when are you going to get a proper job?
They can see I've got a lovely family and I'm doing okay. But they just don't get it at all. The penny's never dropped, and I can share my faith with complete strangers, but with my family, I find it really hard. And I think that is the same for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Now, you did have a proper job. You worked at Barclays.
Yes.
What was wrong at Barclays? Because I work at Barclays.
What did you do?
I'm still at Barclays.
Are you still there?
Yeah.
What's a customer or what staff?
No, staff.
What do you do there?
Mortgages.
Do you know what? I really enjoyed it, but I knew God had called me into Christian work full time. I loved it. I started when I was 16. Mm-hmm. So you start as a new entrant in the machine room and then went on to the tills. Loved it on the tills because I remembered everyone's name. As I said, this photographic memory of mine has proved very useful over the years. And I would see a customer coming. I worked on the South Coast, so a lot of sort of older folk, and I was like their favourite surrogate grandchild. So every Christmas, you wouldn't believe the bottles of wine. And somebody used to give me his old shirts. But I was always larking around and making friends with these people. And, I got quite savvy to it. There was one guy, he had a health food shop, and he had statements once a week. Right. And I always delivered them because I figured if I delivered them, he'd give me a bag of cashews. So that was very nice. So I got addicted to cashew nuts. So I just had a lot of fun there and made lots of mates. And we would go out on a Friday and a Saturday night and have fun. And they knew what I stood for. And they accepted it. And I was one of the boys. And we did also, I was in charge of putting on lots of charity events. So children in need, we escaped from a local prison, dressed as prisoners to Amsterdam for the weekend, and got people to sponsor us and did all those sort of things.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think then that was your first interaction with the public? Basically, that was like your performance, shall we say, every day?
Probably was, actually. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're right on the till. Mm-hmm. When you're in the banking hall, you are performing every day.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, you decided at the age of 21, quite young.
Yep.
That you didn't want to have a proper job anymore. How did you know for sure that God had called you?
I didn't know for sure. I just felt it. I really felt it really well. And as you'll know, when you work for the bank, once you're in it for about 5 years, you get one of these wonderful things called a staff mortgage. Yeah. Literally no percent. Yeah. I mean,
it doesn't exist anymore.
Well, I was going to say, it's like golden handcuffs. So back in the day, because I left in, I joined in 83 and left in 88. I just felt God had called me. And I thought, I don't want to look back in my life and think I've had a comfortable life, but I haven't done all those things that I felt maybe I was destined to do.
When you left, did you have any particular idea or direction in that you wanted to go in?
I went straight on this year's training scheme. So I literally left on the Friday, started on a Monday. This great internship for a year working with an evangelist, did training in the classroom, then out on the road with a full-time evangelist. We went abroad, went to Paris and Switzerland, had amazing mission trips there. We served at events. So classroom training and practical experience, and that was completely life-changing.
So you primarily went to be an evangelist. And so when did you start introducing the comedy and the
Right from the off, really.
right?
I didn't want to be, and we used to see it, because I come from Bournemouth originally, which is where I worked in the bank. And you'd often on a Saturday afternoon see some of these guys, mainly men. The women were standing behind with headscarves on. They'd be in black suits, shouting doom and gloom at people. You can't do this, you can't do that, repent and all this sort of stuff. And I just thought, this is awful. This isn't good news. This is bad news. I want to hear some good news here. And I went and challenged them once, and they fell out of me straight away. But I thought, I don't want to be like that. I want to tell people in a creative way. And I want people to stay right to the end as well. So I found doing the magic and the escapology worked really well. So on a Saturday afternoon in Bournemouth, I know I could get a crowd of 400 people watching me. I'd be in the middle, we'd have a circle all the way around, and we'd have fun and banter, pick on people. I normally pick on one of the biggest, ugliest people, and people think I'd have a death wish, but I'd get them on my side and get them in.
You met Alan then?
Church. And so I get all these people, they put me into the straitjacket and roll up, come and see this, come and see a man get out of a straitjacket, be in a straitjacket. And I figured if I just got out, they'd all go. So you preach while you're in it,
Right, to see.
Things tie us up. And you just get creative with all that sort of stuff. And we pioneered amazing stuff on the streets. We did a thing called Flying Man. And we would say to the crowd, today you're going to see a man fly. And we'd pull out a step ladder, pull someone out of the audience, say he's going to fly. And it was one of our team, and get him up the ladder. We'd have people in front doing this, folding their arms together to catch him. And I would say, just before you jump, a condemned man should have opportunity to say something. What would you like to say, sir? And of course, he was someone in our team. And he would say something along the lines of, before I put my trust in these people, I want to tell you 10 years ago, I put my trust in a God who's never let me down. He's brilliant. He's fantastic. He's a prayer away. And it changed my life. So here we go. And people stay and watch. It's been creative with all these things. That's why I love the magazine. I'm very proud of the magazine, where that goes. And the cartoon, I've got to say, the cartoon has been translated into 4 languages.
Wow.
No one's ever asked for permission. They've just done it and told me once they've done it. I've never had a penny in royalties, but it's been translated into Kyrgyz, and I've worked in Kyrgyzstan, and there's not many Christians out there. And you think, this cartoon has gone all over Kyrgyzstan. That's incredible.
Fantastic.
It translated into Romanian. And a couple of other languages. It's phenomenal where these things can go if you're a little bit creative.
Now, that was a very exciting time for you, of course, starting off on your first journey in evangelism. But there was a tinge of sadness you said about your disapproval from your parents. How hard was that? How hard was that for you?
Do you know what? It was like a red rag to a bull, I think. I thought, I know that this is right. I'm not going to live my life the way they want me to live my life.
Right. Okay.
And we're not terribly close now, which is sad. But they've just never been supportive, really.
Praise God. You can still pray for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you mentioned earlier a guy called Bruce, but now you like this, not a lot, but was it Bruce or Paul Daniels that inspired you for the magic?
Paul Daniels. It was Bruce who was the vicar at the camp.
Right.
So Paul Daniels was a huge inspiration. The Paul Daniels Magic Show, seeing him every Saturday night. And I met Paul Daniels, an amazing character. He was a Christian back in the day, but totally renounced faith. He was in a Methodist church lay preacher, and he would go around and he would do tricks in the pulpit. But so many people complained that he was doing sorcery. He became an avowed atheist for all his life. He had a very sad funeral, one of these totally non-faith funerals. Just really sad, but an amazing entertainer.
So how difficult is it then to be a Christian in that kind of entertainment field?
I don't think it's hard at all. How hard it is to be a Christian at Barclays Bank. I don't think it's any harder to be a Christian in the entertainment field. Maybe the temptations, maybe more temptations there. I think I've handled it quite well over 3 decades.
Now, do you have any siblings, brothers or sisters that you were able to share with?
Do you know what? My little brother died 2 years ago.
Oh.
Yeah, my little brother David, he suddenly started shuffling around, had problems with his leg, went to various doctors, found he had a brain tumour. and he very sadly died.
Sad to hear that.
Within 7 months of first getting ill. So that was a real shocker to mum and dad, especially.
Mm-hmm. Would be, of course.
Yeah.
Now, of course, your career, of course, moved on quite well. Now, it said you've travelled the world, apparently, 30 countries. Which was the most, I would say, productive or impressive on you that you visited?
Do you know what? I loved Mexico City. I told that story earlier.
Mm-hmm.
People come to faith, phenomenal. You know, an occult fair of all places.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's crazy stuff, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Great times in Argentina. Went to King of Kings churches, King of Kings Church, prayed for by the pastor there, Claudia Friedson. That was very powerful. He always pulls English pastors up onto the stage and prayed for people, and felt like electricity through my body and thrown to the ground. First time that's really ever happened. That was many years ago, and we saw a lot of great stuff there out on the streets. I love the UK, George, to be honest with you. I love traveling and speaking to people and seeing how open people are in the UK. They really are.
You mentioned that you were prayed for. How important to you is prayer in what you do as an entertainer, as a Christian? How important is that to you?
You know, I think it's absolutely vital that people have got my back. I mean, I was saying, I don't know whether you were here when we were chatting before, and I've just literally come back from hospital today. I've found out I had cancer 6 months ago and various ops and all that sort of stuff. And just in that process, realizing how many people out there are praying for me has been quite phenomenal and really touching. I think prayer is a secret ingredient in evangelism as well. I know when Billy Graham first came in 1980, first time that I remember in 1984, where I first saw him, you know, prior to Mission England. That was 84, wasn't it? They trialled prayer triplets in the UK. So 3 friends got together once a week and they each prayed for three friends. So 9 people were prayed for. And the prayer triplets were more successful than Billy's mission.
Wow.
People came to faith because consistently, week in, week out, 3 people praying for 3 people each. So 9 people being prayed for. So I think prayer is really, really key.
Fantastic.
It buoyed me on, and I'm doing well. To cut a very long story short, probably September, October time, my lovely wife, Becca, noticed a little black mark on the underside of my foot. And I walk my dog a lot, and I thought it was a little blood blister. And she nagged and nagged and nagged. And in
As
the
they
end,
do.
oh, you said that, not me. And in the end, I thought, okay, I'll go and see my doctor. And then I realised I could take a photo, and I thought, oh, I like that. Then I've got to go in there and waste their time. So I took a photo. They called me in. They said, oh, we're really not sure what that is. Send you to a dermatologist. 2 weeks later, I'm there with this Greek doctor, and we're getting on so well. I showed him a trick and everything, and we're laughing and joking. And he says, I'm really not sure. He said, we really need to take a biopsy. You need to get to hospital for that. I said, look, Doc, any chance you could do it now? Save me a couple of weeks. He said, oh, go on then. So he did this biopsy, and it was on the underside of my foot, the ball of my foot. And he said, look, I've got to warn you, this is the most painful place in your whole body to have an injection. I've got to give you an injection to numb it before I take a biopsy, a little bit of flesh out. And he was so good. I said, this is incredible. I said, I can't feel anything. He said, well, I've not done it yet.
Now that's magic.
Yes. And then he did it. And oh, man, I almost kicked him in the face. I'm really ticklish as well. And he said, no, he said, in other countries, you know, this is how they torture people, sticking needles into their feet. So he sent this off. And he phoned me up 2 weeks later, bolt out of the blue. I sat downstairs, 5:10, watching The Chase on ITV with a mug of coffee. And he said, it's the doc. I said, hey, Doc. And he said, I've got some bad news. You've got some skin cancer. And of course, I didn't ask enough questions. So when my wife came in, she said, well, what sort of cancer? There's all sorts of cancers you can get. And it turns out mine was a malignant melanoma. That's probably the worst you can get. And it started a process of lots of ops. I got some great pictures that I can't show you because they're so horrendous. So the final op was take a great big chunk out of my foot. And the surgeon said, I've got to go 2 centimetres deep. And I misheard him. I thought he said 2 millimetres. But I'm still looking at it now, 2 centimetres. Surely it goes right through your foot. But he went 2 centimetres deep, took a great big chunk out. And they said, we need to check your lymph node because cancer spreads up your lymphatic system. So a lymph node out of my groin, and they subsequently found some traces there. So it meant it had spread. So I'm on a year's worth of immunotherapy, this amazing new drug that 4 years ago wasn't even around.
Mm-hmm.
That is, well, it is and isn't like chemo, because chemo kills everything, the good and the bad, and you hope the good stuff grows back, and it's really brutal. But immunotherapy, essentially a layman's term, it supercharges your immune system to fight any nasty last bits. So I've kind of got a supercharged immune system, but that has certain side effects. And so today I went for a PET scan. So I've been pumped with radioactive stuff. I was telling Alan, I'm very disappointed that I'm not glowing. Maybe if I turn these lights off, I'll be orange. They said you've got to drink and drink and drink to get this stuff out of your system. But I'm being careful not to, otherwise I'll be in the toilet every 5 minutes. So we're really in faith that the cancer's gone. It's stopped at my lymph node. It's not gone beyond. But I really feel like I've had a complete MOT.
Wow.
And I really do believe that good can come out of every situation. And I've shared this on Facebook and with various people. And I've had 2 friends go and have operations and discovered they've got cancer because of my story. And their kids have, or partners have said, "Oh, remember what happened to Steve? Why don't you get that little mark checked out?" You don't think you're going to get skin cancer on your foot.
And how was this?
Mine had nothing to do with the sun. They said it's a rogue gene, and about 1% of skin cancer is on the foot. So people out there watching this, check yourself out. Take a photo, send it to your dog if you're not sure.
And how has this episode affected your life, your faith, your work?
We came out of lockdown, and then the diary started to fill up again, and then this happened. So for 4 months I was unable to walk. I was just tough, because I'm a very active person. I probably put on 2 stone. I'm sat there for 4 months watching telly, trying to do work on my laptop, cancelled all my gigs. Yeah, it was a challenge. I mean, I'm a very upbeat person, but there were moments where it was really tough, because financially all my money comes from gigs. I do Sorted Magazine. That's a faith project. Recently, I've started paying myself £50 a week doing that, but I realised I probably earn more with a paper round.
So because I like what you said there about finance follows faith.
Yeah, totally. I've discovered this again and again and again. I'll just share one thing, George, here. Just to talk about this cancer thing. I found something in Psalms, and I've read through the whole Bible, maybe only 3 or 4 times in my life. So I sat down to do it, and 2 weeks into January, I find I'm skim reading. And if you asked me a minute afterwards what I'd read, I wouldn't have the faintest idea. I
can't remember, yeah.
And I found this while I was going through my cancer treatments. I love walking. From Psalm 56, 12 to 13, from the Message. And I got this all framed up, and it's downstairs in our lounge. God, you did everything you promised, and I'm thanking you with all my heart. You pulled me from the brink of death, my feet from the cliff edge of doom. Now I stroll at leisure with God in the sunlit fields of life. And that's kind of so pertinent to where I was, and the walking and the fields around here that I love walking through. So, Psalm 56, 12 to 13, for those going through medical situations now that seem impossible, print that out, reflect on that, meditate on that. It's really powerful.
That's obviously inspired you. Finance following faith. I mean, you mentioned lockdown as well. How big an impact on that was your income and your actual, your own self being locked away and not in front of people?
Well, it was massive. I mean, I started doing stuff. I started a podcast that has gone very well. If you want to check me out, interviewing people, it's called Backstory Podcast. I don't know if we can get a link up somewhere, Alan, at some point, if you stay in touch with people that are watching. It's called the Backstory Podcast. Put in my name, Steve Legg, Backstory Podcast. You'll find it on any of the podcast platforms. I came up with this idea of chatting to people, famous people, well-known people, mates of mine, just on 5 things that have shaped them. So I love stories. This is why I love this concept that you guys do. Because you can argue with all sorts of things. You can argue with theology and argue on all sorts of points, but you can't really argue with someone's story. Or you can, but it's stupid if you do. It's their story. And I chat to people about 5 stories that have shaped their life, 4 inspirational ones and 1 hugely embarrassing one.
So let's throw that back at you then. What are the 5 things that have shaped your life?
Oh, come on. You've got to give me more time to think about it. I've got plenty of embarrassing ones. I filled a whole book with those. I just spoke to some amazing people. People like Jensen Button, Joe Pasquale, the comedian, Nicky Gumbel, who started this Alpha course, and just fascinating people over the years. Kevin Kennedy, who played Curly in Coronation Street for 20 years. Just a really eclectic mix of people. I've had from the States, I've had from Hall & Oates,
Darrell Hall, was it? John Oates?
John Oates, yes.
Yeah,
Darrell Hall and John Oates. John Oates, I've half an hour with John Oates, an absolutely fascinating character.
Wow.
We talked about music and where he come from and how he started at 16, meeting his musical partner. And we talked about faith a little bit. Jeff Wayne from War of the Worlds. He's another great one. A lot of people who wouldn't necessarily call themselves Christians, they just come on the show and we talk about their stories. So that's been good. I do a little radio show every Saturday lunchtime on Connect Radio, which is this new radio station that it does it's very much crossover. So it's the best Christian music and the best mainstream music. And we have some great guests on that as well. Get busy with that. I did some Zoom shows, but Zoom doesn't work for me. I need a proper audience.
Just to mention to people watching, the backstory with Steve Legg is available on your website, sortedmag.com. I'm just watching.
Yes, if you click, of course, click on there. So sortedmag.com is great. Everything else that I can do, you can contact me through there. But click on there.
So just to finish off on a high note, let's talk a little bit about the Sorted magazine. That's something you said that you were at the school chatting to a friend of yours, or your accountant, I should say, and you were talking about the books that young boys were bringing to the school.
Yeah.
So tell us how it all developed and you got into making this magazine.
Well, I heard this story. I went home. God sort of nudged me, I believe, and said, "Why don't you start something a bit like that?" So I probably went to the newsagent, bought a load of men's magazines. I went through them and thought, I like this, don't like that. That's a good idea. I could twist that. I could do this, I could do that. And then I found a designer and someone to help me with the editing. And I found a printer, and that was it.
And you were away.
We were away with number one, and we had Kaká on the cover, the Brazilian footballer. There was a young guy called Bear Grylls, who was a little bit famous, wasn't as famous as he is now. And I said to Bear, would you be involved in it? He said, that's a great idea, mate. And he's been in every one for the last 15 years. And I've got some good columnists and some great stories. And it's kind of grown from there. So this is number 89. That's out today. And we chat to Martin Sheen, the Hollywood actor. Great story. He's got a strong faith. And Jim Kerr and Tim Campbell from The Apprentice, the first winner of The Apprentice. He shares his story of faith. There's amazing stuff in there.
Is this a free magazine, or is it?
You've got to pay for it, because we think we really want unbelievers to have it for free, but we want Christians to subscribe for £36 a year. And we got Father's Day. I'm not sure. Oh, we're going, look where this is live, isn't it? Of course, yes. Father's Day in the UK is this Sunday.
Correct.
So churches are buying boxes of 40 for 60 quid and giving them to all the men in church. So we want Christians to buy it to fund it, because this costs hundreds of thousands of pounds. I mean, the print alone, and I haven't got that sort of money. So we want Christians to buy it and give them away.
So anybody watching, where can we find this magazine, or where can we get it?
On the website, sortedmag.com. Go on there, subscribe, and then you'll get them in the post.
Now, just finishing off, of all the people you mentioned some really famous characters. Which of the people that you've met through your life have made the most impression on you?
But I think going back, it's Bruce, this vicar, who came along to the Boys Brigade camp once a year, and he told stories and he sang songs with his harmonica thing, and he did watercolour painting, and he cut them out and stuck them on a little board and told stories. And I was talking about him, excuse me, I talk about him a lot, and I mentioned his surname, Bruce Kington. And I was in a church somewhere, and someone said, well, I know Bruce. I said, is he still alive? He said, yeah, he is. He's a real old boy now, but he's still alive. And I found his address and I wrote to him. And I got this beautiful letter back. He didn't type, it was handwritten. It was really spidery. He said, thank you so much. He said, I went to that camp every year for years and years. And I told me stories, and I played my harmonica, and I did me pictures and stuck them on the fuzzy felt board and talked about Jesus and gave away copies of Journey into Life. And I never knew if it impacted anyone. And I said, well, Bruce, if there's such a thing as grandchildren in the faith, you've probably got 100,000, because over the years of my traveling, introducing thousands and thousands of people to Jesus, it would have never happened without you.
Wow.
And that was just lovely to be able to say thank you to him.
Now, looking forward, any plans for the future? Any
Well, back on the road, so I was able to start walking again in April. So I'm out and about. The immunotherapy's going well. So starting a gig again. So looking busy-ish, not as busy as it used to be, but September, October, November are looking good.
So do you think the pandemic has changed people in the way they receive things now?
No, I don't. I think people are really up for it again. We went to a big Christian festival a couple of weeks ago. There were 40,000 people there. The big church festival, and people were just ready to party and celebrate and be back together again.
Sorry, there's one more thing I did want to actually mention to you. I love the story you told about being at Spring Harvest and with your tabard, and
Yes.
you say you can't park there. How much power do you think that gave you? You can't park there.
You give someone a fluorescent tabard and a walkie-talkie, they become different creatures altogether.
Well, you've had a fantastic story. Thank you so much, Steve, for your time.
Thank you for the interview.
Thank you for telling us about it. Of course, there's one question I ask all the guests on this program. Of all the decisions you have made in your life, what is the best decision you have ever made?
Hearing this Christian message and following it.
Amen. Thank you for that, Steve. And with that, I'll go back to my brother Alan. That's the lad we mentioned earlier.
Thank you, George. Thank you, George. Perhaps you're going to leave Barclays to get into some comedy. You're good. Thanks, Steve. That was really wonderful hearing what you shared tonight. Absolutely wonderful. We've had lots of comments. Someone said, I'd love to know, Steve, what's your next strategy to reach people for Jesus? And just to let you know, we have this DVD at our church. So what's your next strategy?
Do you know what? Keep the magazine going, growing the magazine, really. After It's a Boy, I'd written a sequel, an Easter cartoon. It's so expensive and it took so much out of me. I know finance follows faith. Yeah. I'm preaching to myself here. Maybe I ought to crack on with that.
Okay, Business Matters. Yes, we've seen DVD in Scotland in the churches. Great work, Steve.
Thank you.
Leading the way with Dr. Michael Youssef, UK. You're such a blessing, Steve. We see sorted at Manchester Airport all the time.
Wonderful.
Relation Knowledge International, truly inspiring. Keep going, brother. Shalom, Olivia Hare. I watch you on Tough Talk. So blessed. Thanks, Steve. Some great stats already tonight. 104 people who shared the post on Facebook.
Great.
5 people already clicked the salvation link from UK on Facebook tonight. Another message from Facebook, Shalom Olivia Hare. I remember you telling us a funny story with Tough Talk about you in Paris.
Oh, yes.
And then people messaged about Steve's cancer. We're all praying for you.
Thank you.
Tough Talk family. So there you are. Great.
We love the Tough Talk family. They're great guys.
And the podcast is on Facebook and YouTube. Yeah, we got that on there for people to see that.
Yeah, it's easy to find. Backstory podcast. There are a few called Backstory, but mine's got my name on it. There's a yellow and black ad.
Great. It's been so wonderful having you with us, Steve, tonight. Really has been great.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you, George. Thank you, John. Can I invite you all to join us again next Monday, 8 o'clock UK time on LifeStories Worldwide. We're going to California next Monday for David Robinson, Leading the Leaders. Since 1966, David has been developing leaders, building teams, and finding solutions in both the church and the marketplace. He owned and operated a very successful RV dealership with 37 employees, an annual turnover of $50 million. But then since 2005, he's been working, developing leadership, helping people. So you're going to hear from David Robinson next Monday. Tell your friends to join us on Facebook, YouTube, and Zoom. And again, if you need help, call us on our hotline, +44 794 355 0287. Or go to our website, lifestoriesworldwide.com. You'll find lots of information. We have a Life Stories Worldwide app you can get and see all the things that are going on. You can watch other stories from previous Mondays. Lots of good things. So thank you once again. It's been great having you with us, Steve. Thank you, George. Thank you, John. May God bless you all. May you know the joy of the Lord and the peace that passes all human understanding.